Welcome to another season preview. Today we got the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are coming off of a shocking 14-3 season, and I think this is for two reasons. One, an elite defense, and Brian Flores has become one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. I think he's up there with Steve Spagnuolo in terms of guys who can't become head coaches because they can't do all that. But when it comes to strictly running a defense, these are the pinnacle of defensive coordinators. He's up there. And then also Kevin O'Connell's offense. In terms of being able to just take a quarterback and make that quarterback elite, Kevin O'Connell is better than anyone. And he took a reclamation project in Sam Darnold and turned him into one of the better quarterbacks in the entire NFL for the 2024 season. And he's going to have to do that again with a quote unquote rookie in J.J. McCarthy. You're going to have to take advantage of J.J. McCarthy, who's on a rookie contract right now. You're not paying a quarterback top dollar. And they've taken advantage of that and paid guys around him top dollar to make this roster as competitive as possible. I am not a J.J. McCarthy truther. However, in a Kevin O'Connell offense, you never know what can happen. I was just texting my cousin earlier, and I feel like 60% of a player's success in the NFL has to do with situation. And currently, I don't think there's a better situation for a quarterback than the Vikings. You have one of, if not the best receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. You have one of the best wide receiver twos in football in Jordan Addison, who is suspended for the first 3 games, but it could have been a lot worse. You have Jalen Naylor in the slot, and then you draft Ty Felton in the 3rd round, who was one of my more under-the-radar guys that I really enjoyed out of Maryland. And that creates for a really dynamic receiver room. J.J. McCarthy has a ton of options. Justin Jefferson, I'm looking for him to kind of solidify himself as wide receiver one. Maybe he can take the throne back from Jamar Chase because I feel like for like 2 years or so, Jefferson had it, and then it was Jamar Chase last year. Let's see if Justin Jefferson can get his get back. And Jordan Addison, let's see how he looks after the Sussy. And then you have TJ Hawkinson at tight end, who for the entirety of his career has been one of the better tight ends in football, has dealt with some injuries. But I expect Hawkinson to be a nice little safety net for J.J. McCarthy for the early stages of his career. And the team kind of fell apart late in the season last year. They went out really sad in week 18 to lose the divisional race. And then they went out really sad in the first game of the playoffs. And this is because, in my opinion, the line just fell apart, which led to the offense falling apart. Sam Darnold didn't look like the Sam Darnold we saw in the first 13, 14 weeks or so. And they completely revamped it. So Christian Darrisaw is coming back off of that really brutal injury that started the domino effect that was the downfall of the Viking season. You trade for Cam Robinson, and Cam Robinson is a shell of what Christian Darrisaw can give you. So Christian Darrisaw's back. That's basically a free agent acquisition there. Then you draft Donovan Jackson in the 1st round, who is a dog. He can play tackle or guard, but he's going to play guard for them. And then you have Ryan Kelly and Will Freeze, both from Indianapolis, coming in to play center and right guard. And then you have right tackle Brian O'Neill, who is a very, very solid starter. And so from left tackle to right tackle, I think you've got all above average starters. And then Christian Darrisaw, depending on how he looks after the injury, is elite. I've only heard positive things about Donovan Jackson so far through camp and a few preseason games. And then while 2 additions of Ryan Kelly and Will Freeze are new additions to the team, and it's going to take some getting used to, usually when you have these new additions, they haven't played together. Well, you don't have that with Ryan Kelly and Will Freeze. They've played together, so they know each other already. And Donovan Jackson is coming in, going to have to learn his left tackle and center. But overall, I love this offensive line. And again, giving Freeze and Kelly money is just another example of how you can take advantage of a roster who's paying a rookie quarterback. And the defense is really where I get intrigued. They run a 3-4 defense under Brian Flores, and it gets a lot of pressure. For a 14-3 team, I don't think I've ever seen that good of a team have this crazy of roster turnover. And we talked about it with the offensive line on the other side of the ball and the quarterback, obviously. But on this side of the ball, there's just as much of it. First of all, at on in the trenches at defensive tackle slash five tech defensive end, you have Jonathan Allen, one of the better players at that spot coming in, and then you have Javon Hargrave, another one of the better players at that spot coming in. Those are two. Those aren't just free agent acquisitions. Those are top guys that are coming into play, and those guys are going next to nose tackle Harrison Phillips, who has been playing out of his mind since coming into the Vikings as a third round pick out of Stanford by the Bills. Came over to the Vikings after the Bills didn't want to extend him, and he has played really, really serviceable football. They drafted Tyrion Ingram Dawkins in the fifth round of the draft. They have Jalen Redmond and they have Levi Drake Rodriguez as depth behind these guys as well. So, not an incredibly deep unit, but the top guys in the trenches here from 5 tech to 1 tech are really impressive. And then the blitzing backers. You've got Jonathan Grenard, who was a it was almost like a trade. The Texans signed Danielle Hunter from the Vikings, and the Vikings signed Jonathan Grenard from the Texans. And Grenard literally replaced, if not improved, the production from Danielle Hunter, which is saying a whole lot. Jonathan Grenard was one of the best players in football last year. So I look for him to have a huge impact in the pass rush. And then on the other side of him is Andrew Van Ginkel, who is just a rocket off the edge. Really impressive coverage linebacker, but even more impressive pass rusher. And then on the middle, in terms of linebackers, you have Blake Cashman and you have Ivan Pace Jr. Ivan Pace Jr., a bit of an undersized guy out of Cincinnati, but he has really impressed in terms of just wearing that green dot. He can sit back in zone coverage. He can plug gaps and stop the run. He can do it all. He is a really impressive player. That's one of the best front sevens you'll see in all of football. It's up there with the Texans. It's up there with the Eagles. Amazing front seven. Now you get into the secondary, and this is where I have concerns. They're saying goodbye to Cam Bynum and Stephon Gilmore, and that leads me to be very, very scared. I kind of wish they were able to snag a top cornerback in the class, or at least one of them, and they just didn't. And now their boundary corners are Isaiah Rodgers and Jeff Okudah. Both of these guys are guys who I look at as cornerback twos at best, but probably depth cornerback threes. And now they're looked at as the primary boundary guys. At nickel, you still have Byron Murphy, who's one of the best nickels in the game. But boundary receiver, I mean, you have boundary receivers like Christian Watson, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore. These guys are going to test this defense, and I'm worried. Jamison Williams is going to smoke these guys on the perimeter. Or I know Amon-Ra St. Brown is really a nickel, or not a nickel, a slot receiver, but I just really worry about the boundary corners, like outside the hash marks, one-on-one matchups. Safety, it's getting hilarious how long Harrison Smith has been on the Vikings. He's just the epitome of consistency. He's just a ranger back there, patrolling the back end of the defense, making sure he keeps a cap on everything. Not enough good things to say about him. And then next to him is Joshua Metellus, who has been an incredibly serviceable, strong safety, former 6th-round pick. Another unfortunate thing is I don't see a lot of depth on this depth chart in the secondary. In the safety room, you've got Theo Jackson and Jay Ward in terms of depth behind Metellus and Harrison Smith. I'm not moved by either of those names. Behind Byron Murphy at the nickel, you have Tavier Thomas, again, not moved. And then in terms of cornerback depth, you have Dwight McLaughlin and Mekhi Blackman. That's brutal. But I think a Brian Flores defense can kind of hide these issues. I've been seeing a lot of bad Jeff Okudah reps in camp. Hopefully that's just because he's going up against a Kevin O'Connell defense. We shall see when September 4th rolls around. Now let's do the thing where we look at the Vikings schedule and predict their record. The Vikings have a soft start to the season. They start in Chicago against the Bears on Monday Night Football before 2 home games against the Falcons on Sunday Night Football and the Bengals before heading overseas. I believe this one's in London, if I'm not mistaken. It's in Europe, or maybe Dublin, to play the Steelers. I'm going to have them starting 3-1. They stay in Europe because I believe this Browns game is actually again in England, and the last one was in Dublin to play the Browns before a week 6 bye, which is nice. You have the two Europe games. Let's have the bye. It's a week 6 bye, so it's early, but given the circumstances, I'm sure they're glad they have that. And then they come out of the bye to host the Eagles and then finish October on the road in Los Angeles against the Chargers. I have the Vikings going 1-2 here. I think the Browns is a win overseas, and then you have a bye. I don't see them beating the Eagles, and I think the Chargers are a little too gritty for them. And the weapons that the Chargers can use is a bit of a nightmare for the Minnesota Vikings because you have Vlad McConkey who can be boundary, can be slot. So I expect Byron Murphy to be primarily on him. But then you have Keenan Allen who is not a yards after catch guy anymore, but he's still going to shake an Isaiah Rodgers or a Jeff Okudah to get open. You have Quentin Johnston who I know the jokes. I know the jokes. But I'm taking Quentin Johnston to at least create separation against those guys. And then you have the running attack, which might get shut down against the Vikings, to be honest. But then you flip the coin, and I don't think J.J. McCarthy has the it factor to beat a Chargers defense, which is quite impressive and under talked about, in my opinion. Week 9 is where the schedule really starts to pick up. You have the Lions on the road, you host the Ravens, then host the Bears, and then you have two more road games against the Packers and the Seahawks. I have the Vikings going 2-3 in this stretch. I think the easiest wins are the Seahawks and the Bears. I could see them going 3-2 and picking up a win against maybe the Lions and splitting with the Lions. I don't know. It's all very dicey to me, but I'm going to go 2-3. And then the final stretch of the season sees them host the Commanders, then two road game against AFC or NFC East opponents in the Cowboys and the Giants. They host the Lions on Christmas, and then they conclude the season at home against the Packers. To close out the season, I'm having the Vikings going 3-2 in this stretch, which gives them a final record of 9-8. Now, 9-8 would mean a 5-game win regression for the Minnesota Vikings, which is not ideal, but there is a lot of roster turnover. There is a quarterback change, and they're sticking with a quarterback that I have no confidence in. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned. They're in a really tough division that's only getting better, apparently, and they don't have an easy schedule. I mean, out of division opponents, they have guys like the Commanders. They have, let's take a look. Let's take a look at their not the biggest non-division opponents. The Commanders, the Ravens, you can count the Seahawks, the Eagles, the Chargers, Bengals, Steelers, Falcons. All these teams are supposed to be better than they were last year. Where are the Vikings going to pick up sneaky wins? I just don't see it. So 9-8 probably won't be enough for a playoff appearance. I'm not sure. Could be, they could sneak in. I don't know. But anyway, I hope I'm not too low on the Vikings for your taste, but if I am, that's okay. We can disagree on things. I appreciate you watching. I love you very much. Let me know what you think of the Vikings, and I'll see you next time. Adios.